the Lion was doing its job yesterday. And by the way, my friend Mary Regina, who sends us in the Mother Teresa, her and Bobby Harrington, they gave a Quilt of Valor. And Mary joined the group, by the way, after listening to the show the one time. And to Michael Martirana, who is a Vietnam vet. And I told her, let's get him on the air and talk about him. Let's give him a tribute. Because we had the Quilts of Valor people on, and I'll have them on anytime they want. They're great. And these Quilts of Valor, by the way, Joe Barna, when we went down to his 95th birthday party down at the Freeland VFW, one of the things he had, and he's got medals and memorabilia galore from his 95 years of life and his time in the Marine Corps. And one of the things he was proudest of was the Quilt of Valor that he was given. It's a big deal, and it's a big honor. I see it every so often in the Citizen's Voice. People and the Times Leader, people being awarded a Quilt of Valor. And I saw the Bobby Harrington given to Mike Martirana, the Quilt of Valor that Mary had, I guess, helped do so. And it was in that, I'm telling you, we're so lucky in Dunmore. We have this great little newspaper called the Dunmorian. And it comes out and it's full color. And they talk about, an area native. They have a Dunmorian of the month. It's just really a cute, good little paper. And it still comes out, in print, which those of us, I don't know if it's of my age and older, can appreciate. And that was in the Quilt of Valor picture was in there. My son Michael was in there too. There was a picture of him giving a check to somebody. I didn't even get to read the story. We got carried away with our clams. Anyway, yeah. Quilts of Valor. What a great group. Love them. All right, we got to go. It's time for the news. We're late. We're very late, but those discussions were worth it. Plains American Legion. We'll remember it for next year. Bob Cordaro on the eponymous program. We'll come back, and guess what? A Tuesday edition of Monday Musings with our man John Perillo. We'll be back. We played this and sang this yesterday, and we sort of agreed that this is even more our favorite than My Way. Yeah. I used to sing this in prison. Great good morning, everyone. 10:12 a.m. here in the great Northeast this beautiful Tuesday, May 27th, 2025. This is the Bob Cordaro Show, and I am he. And it's a big day to fight for America, defend our values, and with the help of John Basiliga and his incredible companies, to honor the brave who have made us and kept us free. People like veterans we lost this year, but through John have an opportunity to celebrate today. Deborah Zimmerman, Scranton. Jim Rogers, Lehman. Ronald Lewis, Whitehaven and Bear Creek. Neil Husvar, late of Palm Springs, California. He was from North Scranton. Sterling Schumann, Bloomsburg. And John Betts, Anthony Township. So with history, our great founding fathers, and the incomparable Constitution of the United States of America as our guides, let us continue today's battle. Gaveling back to order this meeting of the Club for Common Sense, promising you that we're committed to common sense, and we will provide a sanctuary of sanity for all of you in a world where idiots like Mayor Brandon Johnson are celebrating Happy Africa Day instead of Memorial Day. He's a sick, mentally ill pig. I wish I could cuss, because I would. I got words to call him. Well, speaking of people that we care about, longtime listener, Dunmore School Board member, and my friend for forever, hung around with his brother, John Booker Butler. Mike Butler passed away. He's being, his funeral's today, and we're going to miss him. We really are. Character and a half. Poet Joe texted in. He said, a while back in the Citizen's Voice, this is apropos of the Dunmorian that I told you about, there was a cartoon with two canaries in a cage. Instead of doing their business on a newspaper, on the bottom of the cage was a laptop, and one of the canaries says to the other, "It's just not the same, is it?" By the way, speaking of, and I wasn't a big fan, although I got a kick out of him. One of our great listeners texted in, speaking of African Americans, blacks who were in our military, former New York Congressman Charlie Rangel passed away. I did not know that. He was a Korean War veteran, Purple Heart. Yep. But then he got in on the scam, the left-wing scam. But sad, sad that his passing. He was beyond colorful. Texting in, somebody says, "Good morning, Bob." Oh, it's not just somebody. It's Charles from Scott Township. He says, "Every time you play Frank, I want to go get a Don Diego cigar and a bottle of 10-year-old scotch. The problem is I quit smoking and drinking about 20 years ago." Good for you. Good for you. Well, Johnny, you were telling me about, there were rain interrupted, but there was a little Memorial Day service up in Jessup. Tell us about it. Mm-hmm. And you said our friend Russell Canaveri was there, and he was doing well. He looked good. Remember, we had to plea for his. He was looking. He needed a transplant not that long ago, and he got it. And he's hale and hearty. I love hearing that. Oh, I wish I could have been there. He was great in our service, and he's a veteran's veteran. He really is, Russell Canaveri. Thank you for mentioning that, Bulldog. These Memorial Day services, guys, you got to go. You got to try to go if you can. They're important, and it's not always easy to focus on our war dead, when you're doing your usual thing. So taking the time out, and the services are very short. I have 60 plus ADD, but they're very short, and they're great, and they help you focus on the reason for the day. Our war dead. All right, we're going to take a break. We got to take a break because I ate into John Perillo's time, so we've got to give him a clear span because he doesn't say hello in 1 minute. And plus, he was with my two of my sons out in Denver last Thursday night, so I get to talk to him a little bit about that, maybe. But we're going to come back. We're going to do Monday Musings on a Tuesday with our man John Perillo. We'll be back. It's the Bob Cordaro Show. Our veterans this hour and every hour, this day and every day, brought to you by John Basiliga and his great companies, Basiliga Hospitality. And by the way, Queen City Tavern opening Thursday up in Oliphant. Stegmaier Mansion, soft open, Friday, Saturday, already sold out down in Wilkes-Barre. And you're going to love it. Man, are you. Serenity Care, 4 facilities, Lackawanna and Luzerne County. The gold standard in senior care. J. Bass Realty, the most outstanding apartments anywhere. And I mean anywhere. Class A office space as well. J. Bass Realty. Deborah Phillips Zimmerman. Oh, that was last hour. I apologize. Ronald Lewis. He was 83 when we lost him March 25th. He was from Whitehaven and Bear Creek. Passed away peacefully in Arizona. Reunited in heaven with his beloved wife, Peggy. Born in Lee Park, graduate of Coughlin High School. Ron was a U.S. Navy veteran serving aboard the USS Albany, 1959 to 1962. He worked as a mason and carpenter and retired from Westchester University. An avid outdoorsman and a storyteller. A man of deep faith, longtime member of the Baptist Tabernacle in Lee Park, and later the Messiah Primitive Methodist Church in Bear Creek. Survived by his daughter, his son, their spouses. Sadly preceded in death by his wife, Peggy, and 2 brothers. Ronald Lewis. Neil Husvar, he was just 52 when we lost him March 11th. Late of Palm Springs, California, but he was from North Scranton. Born in Scranton. 1990, graduate of the great Scranton Central High School. He served in the U.S. Army and later attended Marywood University. Neil was a free spirit, accomplished artist, musician, body piercer at Mark's Tattooing in the late 1990s, master of his craft. At the same time, he was part owner of the Diamond Club. He moved with the love of his life and longtime companion, Sarah Spittle, to Palm Springs, California. There he became a self-taught photographer, contributor to Palm Springs Life magazine, shooting the Coachella and Stagecoach festivals. He was also a respected realtor in Palm Springs. In addition to the love of his life, Sarah, he's survived by his children, daughter Savannah, his son, and best friend John Gabriel, his own mother, Anne Marie, brothers, nieces, aunts, uncles, and other family. Neil Husvar, our great veterans this hour, brought to you by John Basiliga and his great companies. Well, that means the weather. Well, let's take today for what we got. The Storm Tracker 16 forecast. Meteorologist Joe Snedeker says today, mix of clouds and sun, mild, 73. Tonight, increasing clouds with showers likely. That's okay, 53. Wednesday, clouds with on and off showers. It'll be 63. Thursday, clouds with some breaks of sun with a chance of showers, 70. As I said, I do try to listen to the morning show as often as I can, and I caught Snedeker, and he thinks we're going to have 80 degrees at some point next week. So that's a good thing. All right. Well, it's time. We've moved things around because I prattled on earlier in the hour. But you hear that music. That means it's time for Monday Musings. That means it's time for John Perillo. And here he is, right on cue. John, how are you, John?
Well, I'm glad I got a cue. How's it going?
Great. Well, I am disappointed I couldn't be in Denver with you guys last Thursday.
Well, that was very interesting. It's I always love talking to young people with good questions and spending the time to actually have in-depth conversations. I mean, that's what this show is, right? I mean, we're trying to talk about complex things, and we're trying to get things done in a certain amount of time, and it's always hard to have that to make that work. And when you have young people who are smart and inquisitive, and they challenge the way I think. So it was a great night. I really appreciated that.
Beautiful.
And first of all, I can't let Memorial Day go by without just a brief comment. And I'd like to start by giving my utmost thanks to those families who have endured the horror of seeing a chaplain and another in the uniform of their loved one walking up the driveway. And I can't imagine your pain, and I can't do any better than maybe to quote Abraham Lincoln in his letter to Miss Bixby of Boston. She had lost several of her sons in battle in the pursuit of defending what the promise of the Declaration of Independence, for all people. And he says in his letter to her, "I feel how weak and fruitless must be any word of mine which should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming, but I cannot refrain from tendering you the consolation that may be found in the thanks of the Republic they died to save," end quote. So again, I'll just thank you to everybody out there who's had to put up with that. But this week's topic, I thought as listeners here know, my favorite topic is civilization and how we need to defend it, because the alternative is pretty awful. And I've heard, from some listeners that I've exaggerated the threat a little bit, and I thought I'd like to spend some time discussing why I believe what I believe. And I'm going to use some of the work by a British military professor of war named David Betts. And his specialty is the study of what causes wars. And his idea was to use some of what he'd learned to help the British military do better in some of the recent conflicts that we've seen globally. The British have been, kind of by our side. And a lot of these conflicts are really what amount to civil wars. And a civil war is defined as groups of people within the same countries or disputed territories fighting for control. And his work was designed to give people in the military some insights into what they would see in these conflicts. But in his studies, he comes across something very interesting. And while I thought y'all might be interested as well, and this will take a couple of weeks to review, so I hope that's okay with you all here. I'm going to jump into the first part of it, just the first part. And Mr. Betts is British, and he starts by writing about Europe, and he begins by quoting the EU foreign minister who said, "Europe is a garden. We've built a garden. Everything works. It's the best combination of political freedom, economic prosperity, and social cohesion that humankind has been able to build. The three things together, most of the rest of the world is a jungle," end quote. That's the European foreign minister. And if you remember, if you compare that quote to our previous discussions of what J.D. Vance said about Europe, you'd see something vastly different. And that's because what Vance said about the region was that Europe was not a garden. And further, that the biggest threats to Europe were not some external invasion, but rather internal disintegration. Things like social instability, economic decline, the abandonment of the cultures that built Europe. That's what Vance was describing. And in fact, those represent the collapse of Western civilization. And now for us in the U.S., we get to think all smugly about that being a European problem. But let's, for a second, I'm going to actually quote Joe Biden from September 22, where he said, "MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. Governments are beginning to take heed, albeit cautiously and awkwardly," end quote. And those on the other side of the U.S. political spectrum have also said the same thing about Democrats. So what's really going on here? And when we look at the histories of the kinds of civil wars that Mr. Betts is talking about, the Middle East primarily, but also Africa and large parts of Asia, all of the studies agree on a couple of points. And the first is that these kinds of conflicts are not generally an issue in countries that are wealthy. And the second is that countries with governmental stability rarely have these issues either. And interestingly, the data does not conclude that autocracies are more likely to result in civil war. And you'll remember back when we did Plato that he actually advocated for autocratic rule, even as he had some very specific ideas of what he wanted in an autocrat. So while autocracy is not a predictor of civil war, what is a predictor, if the government is representative, is its perceived legitimacy. And if the people feel that the government is not legitimate, then that is one of the most important factors in predicting civil strife. I'll go ahead and noodle on that for just a couple of seconds. We're going to get back to it, right? The other major factor is what this Professor Betts calls factionalization. And it doesn't always work the way you'd expect it. So if a society is highly factional, lots of disagreeing parties, then they might have trouble getting together a workable coalition to contest kind of the existing governmental structure. But it's the moderately factionalized populations, excuse me, that are the most dangerous. A few factions are actually more likely to result in civil conflict than highly factionalized societies. And again, nobody's opinion here, just data. And in particular, his analysis shows that the countries where a former controlling majority is losing its majority is the most dangerous, right? And again, please remember that this study was designed to help military personnel understand civil wars in third world nations, because the criteria that he lists would have historically kept Western nations out of that group, right? But what if that's no longer the case? Right, so in 1991, Arthur Schlesinger, he argued in the Disuniting of America that the, quote, cult of ethnicity, end quote, was destroying the cohesion of the United States. We'd stopped being American and had become instead something hyphen American. And one's loyalty belonged to the word in front of the hyphen, not the American part. And then you add to that something called the Ephelman Trust Barometer, which is it's a survey, which said that distrust is now America's society's default emotion. That's their words. And even before COVID and before the Biden election, before those two events, 68% of Americans believed that it was urgent that we repair the confidence of society in government and other social institutions. And again, this is before COVID and before the Biden election. And remember that in representative governments, the biggest factor that predicted a descent into civil war was the perception of illegitimacy. And in the last few elections, both parties have claimed that the other side's victory was illegitimate. And now you understand why having voter confidence in elections is not just important, it's absolutely critical to our nation's survival. And there was a time not long ago when the danger of tribalism was recognized by some leaders, even in Europe. Former German Chancellor Merkel and former Prime Minister David Cameron of Britain both said that multiculturalism was failing their respective countries because it was splitting people into minorities with no common national identity. Neither of them would say that out loud today, of course, but they managed to say it in the past.
Yeah.
And that in itself is important, right? A topic for another time. Neither of those are crazy right-wing politicians, yet they both recognize the danger of multiculturalism, and they both felt the social pressure to say nothing about it. And last week we talked about AI and how dehumanizing it is. In a slightly less effective but still very important form of digital dehumanization is social media, which allows people to find groups that are like-minded, however narrowly defined that is. So if you think that the Earth is flat or that the moon landings were faked, social media has a group for you. And then that segmented media reinforces those beliefs by feeding people information that confirms their bias, because the algorithms that those companies create are designed to maximize clicks and interactions, whereas capital T truth is actually irrelevant, right? It becomes possible to live one's entire life and never hear presented an alternative position, either in your friend group or in the media, and that helps reinforce this creation of tribes. And then you add to that the fact that online tribal fighting, which is actually leading to physical fighting in kind of this reinforcing cycle. So you have, for instance, the ongoing violence between Hindus and Muslims in Great Britain, and we have the rioting that took place all over the United States, all of which were reinforced by an echo chamber of media and tribal associations, right? The murder of these two young Israeli embassy officials was committed by a guy who apparently believes what most of the campus of Harvard believes, right? And making his beliefs hardly outside the mainstream of his tribe, right? And now we have, essentially this kind of tribal violence coming to the United States. In these cases, the rioters were not British or American. They were whatever the tribe was that they belonged to, and the other whom they rioted against was the other. And this is the kind of stuff that we see in third world manure holes, and it's now in Europe and here in the United States. And remember, we started this musing kind of by discussing why third world countries collapse into civil war. And what we find is that we've done kind of an exceptionally good job of creating those exact same conditions here in the U.S. and in Europe. But the data shows that wealthy countries rarely have this issue. So it shouldn't be a problem for us, except that we've done, we've largely
Well,
deindustrialized.
the passivity in the face of left-wing lunacy, the passivity in the face of Islamism, not Muslims, Islamism, it's a death knell.
And just to stick, because I agree with Bob here, and if we just stick to wealth for 1 second, right? We need, as we've deindustrialized, which us free traders point out helps economies in aggregate, but we need to acknowledge that it's certainly hurt individuals who now are having trouble finding employment in this kind of post-industrial society. And then you add to that, various government programs that have driven up the cost of energy, or regulations that drive up food costs, restrictions on buildings that drive up, housing costs. You create the system where some people do fine, but an entire segment of the population is watching their living standards decrease, even though they were promised better if they followed the rules. And the data on civil wars shows that a divergence between expectations and reality is another key factor in the creation of conflict, right? So a nation that is generally poor and has always been poor is less likely to wind up in a conflict than a nation that has an expectation of increasing standards of living and winds up heading in the other direction.
And it rends before civil war. What is almost as bad? It rends the social fabric. You've got nothing but a country in name only. That's where Europe is headed. That's where Great Britain is right now, I think.
Right, and I think Bob, that's a key point, right? There was a time 1 generation ago when all Western countries would likely to have been seen as cohesive nations. There were tensions, there always were. That's human nature, right? But I can tell you that my father never let us hyphenate our ethnicity. We were Americans, right? The post-World War II French were French, and they were proud of it, right? The post-World War II British were British, and they were proud of it. And what we have today is a fractured group of competing tribes living segregated lives, generally now also physically segregated, and now competing for what's left over of social resources as economies begin to they have to pull back somewhat, right? So now you have these competing social resources, and that's precisely the recipe for social collapse. And again, this is not my opinion. This is just the data that this British historian was kind of going into. And there's a bunch more that I'd like to cover on this topic, but I want to cut it off here for today. Yep. Give you something to think about, and then I'll come back next week and we'll continue on this theme if it's okay, because I want to dig down deeper into what we can expect to see,
nihilism,
and what's going out there. Right? I think there's a lot to talk about on this particular topic.
No doubt, and it needs to we continue to explore it. With your help, John Perillo. Thank you so much. Monday Musings on a Tuesday. John Perillo, our man.
And thank you to you and your listeners again for giving me some time. I hope you guys have a great rest of the week, and I hope you continue to memorialize those who died in our behalf.
Not to be forgotten, and not to be just remembered on one day. Thank you, John.
Yes, sir. Take care.
We'll take a break. Bob Cordaro on the eponymous program, rolling on here on WILK. I just sent you. Sinatra Day today. Just because. Somebody texted in, they attended the Wilkes-Barre Township Memorial Day Parade and Ceremony, and just before the ceremony started, a person had a heart attack and was revitalized with CPR and the defibrillator they had on hand. Just a tremendous thank you to everyone that played a part in saving Timmy's life. Norm from Wilkes-Barre Township. How about that? That's a big deal. I hope Timmy's doing well this as we speak. Somebody said, hey, Bob, what is your email? I have two things to send you, Sinatra dinner at IREM and a small local event supporting the SPCA. You could get me at Robert.Cordaro. That's Cordaro at Odyssey. Stupid name. AUDACY.com. Robert.Cordaro, Cordaro, at Odyssey, AUDACY.com. Send me that information. Anyway, a couple of notes, or one note anyway. On the 22nd of May, and this, I didn't see much reportage on it, but I'm sure it was. The judges in Lackawanna County, we've got this continued nonsense going on over the appointment of a commissioner to replace Matt McGloin, who was smart enough to get out a sinking ship with Bill Gaughan, the Biden Street author. Anyway, and the tax increase author as well here in Lackawanna County. The court ordered that the Lackawanna County solicitor was never properly authorized by a majority vote of the board of Lackawanna County Commissioners to file on behalf of Lackawanna County. Therefore, Lackawanna County is stricken as a party. So any entry of appearance by a solicitor of Lackawanna County, and he's incompetent, so he had to hire a law firm on behalf of Lackawanna County, is stricken. Because they had no authority to do it. It's just what we said. The court concludes both Commissioner Gaughan and Chermak have standing to proceed as individual public officials with an interest, but on their own, which is exactly what we said. And so they've directed that the commissioner's vacancy be filled, according to Lackawanna County Home Rule Charter. Judge Massoni dissented for some reason. Giroulo and Minora for it. I don't know what Judge Bob Mazzoni was thinking, but whatever. So because that was the main thing. It's just what Chermak and P.J. LaBelle had said. Hey, we're not talking about the merits of the case. We're saying Bill Gaughan doesn't have the right to use taxpayer money without authorization. Period. All right, Bloomberg Money Minute, and then we'll be back. Somebody suggested, one of our listeners said, play Sinatra for 3 hours. It'll be better show. Well, why Frank drones on. Sinatra dinner nights at the Greens at Iram. Aubrey Yefko checking in. June 7th, 12 to 2 at the farm stand in Shavertown. Well, no, I guess it's 2 events. I'm trying to figure it out. You got to call in. That's why I don't try to step on your events. SPCA of Luzerne County, June 7th, 12 to 2 p.m. I can't tell where it is on the thing that was sent. It's at the farm stand in support of the SPCA. All right, what else do we have here? 12 to 2, June 7th. There you go. And then a separate event, apparently. They have a 4-course dinner, Sinatra tunes, walk-ins welcome at the Greens at Iram. You go greensatiram.com/reservations or call 270-3818. That sounds like fun. You got to call in. Come on, Aubrey. Sinatra. I remember as he got old, he would try to hold that note to prove he still had it. We don't still have it, Frankie. It's what it is. It's what it is. All right. So, just, man, you go through the budget bill. There's Medicaid work requirements, and they're cutting out people who should not be getting it, like illegal aliens. Now, that's not a cut. That's a reform. So when they say cut, they're lying. When we find out that Medicare and Medicaid is spending not a few times more, thousands of times more on specific medications than the general public could by just walking up and buying them. That's a reform. That's not a cut. And I've played those quotes from Obama and Schumer and Biden, all saying, yeah, we got to get the waste out. Nancy Pelosi. Now people are going to die if we don't do it. Disgusting. They're liars. They're disgusting liars. Now, Ron Johnson, a guy I generally like, Wisconsin Senator, Republican. He's talking about putting a group together to stop the big, beautiful bill that the House passed with some, not much, some consternation. Now, it is possible through these machinations, the bill will be improved. Like, I would like actual spending cuts. I think we waste so much money just by spending it. Never by misspending that Doge is uncovering, but total waste of money. Just shouldn't be spending it. We don't have it. That's the thing that's overlooked over and over and over again. So we'll see where the big, beautiful bill goes with the Senate. It may be improved. And if it's changed dramatically enough, then the House will have to vote on it again. Somebody says, I can get WILK on Radio USA app. Radio USA. It works better than Odyssey. Okay. Yeah, however you can listen. I love you listening. I want you part of the family. We're a large dysfunctional family, but and growing, but a family nevertheless. All right, time for a break because it is news time. Brian Hughes has that. We'll come back. Much more to go on the Lollapalooza, the third hour of the program. And let's do that after this. Great good morning, everyone. 11:10 a.m. here in the great Northeast this beautiful Tuesday, May 27, 2025. This is the Bob Cordaro Show. I am he, and it's a big day to fight for America, defend our values, and with the help of our man, John Basiliga, and his fine family of companies, to honor the brave who have made us and kept us free. People like the veterans we've lost this year, but through John have an opportunity to celebrate today. So with history, our founding fathers, and the incomparable Constitution of the United States of America as our guides, let us continue today's battle. Gaveling back to order this meeting of the Club for Common Sense, promising you a sanctuary of sanity as we pay tribute to the veterans. John Betts, Anthony Township, Sterling Schumann, Bloomsburg, Neil Husvar, Leyda, California, but he was from North Scranton, Ronald Lewis, Whitehaven, Bear Creek, Leyda, Arizona, Deborah Zimmerman, Scranton, and Jim Rogers, Lehman. Well, we played that for Murph. That's one of his favorite songs. I said, I was saying there's so many great Sinatra songs, it's hard to pick. So I said, we're just blanking out or not picking the ones that he did a cover. But Murph liked it. And I do too, by the way, because it's funny how he changes the word. It's almost like Joe Piscopo imitating Frank Sinatra when he does Bad Leroy Brown. It's very funny. Very funny. By the way, just so you guys know, on Thursday, we're going to have Ambassador Francis Rooney. We've had him on a number of times before. He was former congressman from Florida, ambassador to the Holy See. And we're going to have him talking about the new pope and all of that. Navy guy says that version of Leroy Brown sucked. Well, it was from his return to the Garden on, the one that Howard Cosell opened the program with. I think it's funny, though, Navy guy. You got to admit it's funny. Someone texts in, how about Shapiro and the three Supreme Court judges in PA? Talk about spending. People complain about utility bills, but keep electing the same Dems. And some Republicans, too, I agree. We are broke. Like, why can't government just make the hard decision, not the easy decision to raise taxes? I made that mistake myself. I regret it to this day. It would have required so many layoffs of people that I knew I just didn't do it. And I was wrong. Government's too big. It's doing things that don't even make any sense. And the federal government, but by the way, don't think it's just the federal government that needs Doge. I will guarantee you, nonprofits and NGOs are making a fortune off the state of Pennsylvania. And we know right here in the city of Scranton, they're using so many consultants to the tune of millions of dollars. Mayor many names. And just blowing our money. Wait a minute. The same thing with Bill Gaughan in Lackawanna County. We elected you to make these decisions and to have that knowledge, not to pick consultants. And by the way, that we pay for. Unreal. It's crazy stuff. And they keep doing it. They're doing it at all levels. And they squeal like stuck pigs, and their media handmaidens, who are part of the same corruption, carry on about cuts, and people are going to die. And that's your Democrat Party today. Disgrace. Absolute, total, utter disgrace. That's before they get into their left-wing lunacy. California and we've talked about this a number of times. They've got a transgender boy who's competing with the girls in track. And he's blowing them away. And they're going to states, which all these girls have prepared for. And this boy is going to come in and blow them all away. And Newsom is ignoring the order, the executive order from Trump. And Trump said, I'm going to call him. I'm going to talk to him about it. Why are you ignoring it? By the way, especially after Newsom and his own podcast said, yeah, it's not fair to have boys competing with girls. He said it. But see, it's how to get by that moment. And he's doing nothing about it. We'll see where this heads. But you could say how few transgenders are upsetting the apple cart. And that's fine. It's actually, I agree. It's not a lot of them. But we now have Pennsylvania, Maine, and California. An entire state full of young lady and girl athletes are being screwed by transgender insanity. And I say it over and over again. They need compassion. They need support. They need understanding when they've got gender dysphoria. But they don't get special privileges. All right, you got a condition. Well, you don't get special privileges because of it. You don't get to go in girls' locker rooms. You don't get it to go to girls' bathrooms. And you don't get to compete with them in sports. That's not cruel. It's cruel to all the girls in all of those states. And look at international or national swimming. Penn and the man who competed, I don't care what you want to identify as. That doesn't give you the right to compete as a woman. Doesn't. The Olympian man competing as a woman in boxing, it was painful to watch. It was actually disgusting to watch. But Leah, whatever her name is at Penn, stole national championships off every woman who competed. So, yeah, there could be a few of quality athleticism, but it destroys the whole sport and every girl or young woman trying to compete. Tom from Dallas says, Bob, I heard Mayor Many Names is paying a consultant to see if she could use consultants in the future. It's not ha-ha, Tom. She used a consultant to pick a consultant. She did it. It's already been done. This is the insanity. Somebody rightly points out now, National Organization for Women doesn't even address this because they're idiots. They're not for women. Just like unions like the SEIU are not for the government workers. They shouldn't exist, by the way, government employee unions. Yeah, yes, they need civil service protections against craven politicians, no doubt. But they represent an agenda, a left-wing lunatic agenda, not their workers. Same thing with the teachers' unions. Somebody says, can you ask the Democrat listeners when Project 2025 is coming out? I know. Isn't it ridiculous? Ridiculous. All right, we have to take this break. Bob Cordaro, WILK. We'll take the break. We'll be back. And we got a lot more to say. We'll be back. during the musical interlude. I just mentioned to you Thursday, June 19th. And we're going to have them on Monday. The ARC, Association of Retarded Citizens, Lackawanna County. Angels on Stage. My friend Jerry Featherby is running this program. One show only, 7 o'clock at Lackawanna College. Adults with disabilities will be performing this play. We're going to have them in on Monday, and I'm hoping we're having them on with Doc and Chewy and maybe Lissa on KRZ, but Doc and Chewy on Froggy this Monday. Some of the performers and all of that. Excited. And you heard Barry Obama, apologizing for Truman, who saved at least 1 million Japanese lives by dropping those 2 atomic bombs. I heard no acknowledgement. I remember the speech at the time. And it had to be conciliatory. I get that. But there was no mention of the brutality and savagery of the Empire of Japan. Not only with Americans and that they had captured, and in the fighting against Americans, and in the sneak attack on Pearl Harbor, which we lost over 100 people from this area alone. I mean, they were savages. They fought like savages. And we have to have, like, okay, you've got to be conciliatory. You're in Japan, you're there to, okay, fine. But why not talk about how did this country, this amazing culture, get taken over by evil, by savagery, and then pursued it? And he should have mentioned that millions of lives were saved by the atomic bombs being dropped. But he wouldn't. He's a goofball. And he didn't. Hey, quickly. Mother Teresa. May 26th and 27th. So this is May 26th, yesterday. Be faithful to the time spent in prayer and make sure that at least half of your prayer is spent in silence. This will bring you closer to Jesus. If you deepen your prayer life, you will grow in holiness and obtain many graces for the souls entrusted to your care. Deepen your love for one another by praying for each other and by sharing thoughts and graces you have received in prayer and reading. May 26th. I think of my friend Mike Butler being celebrated in his funeral today. May 27th, today. You are called to be holy where you are, wherever God has put you, right now. Thank you, Mary Regina and Mother Teresa. Let's go to Mike from Bloomsburg. Michael, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good there. I heard you talking, or your clip of Obama. Well, you kind of criticized it, but what would you expect from an anti-American person?
I know.
I mean, that's the bottom line here. Okay, the reason I called was because I was listening to Sue last week, and either she had clips of Shapiro, or I think he might have been on one of your shows earlier in the day. But long story short, he said Pennsylvania is facing a 5% cut in Medicaid, and 34,000 people are going to lose Medicaid because of that. And you know what?
Yeah, they're either illegal aliens, or if they don't work 20 hours a week, which the jobs are available, then they don't get it. Okay.
Well, why did he leave that out of the conversation?
Because they'd have to. Well, they're liars. He's a liar. That's why.
He's a good Democrat, isn't he?
He's awful. He's fake. He's a moderate, and I have it on air quotes on the live stream. Phony.
He's a good Democrat because he could stand there and say 134,000 people are going to lose their Medicaid because of a 5% cut.
By the way, the bill isn't even finished yet. They're just phony liars. Yep.
It just is pathetic. And the bottom line of this call, I do believe that this administration is America's last chance.
Yes.
I do believe it. And now, it may not happen overnight, but we're in an insidious downward spiral of bad governance. And not only bad governance, I do believe there are a number of people behind the mask that want this to happen, that want us to collapse, that want us to follow the EU and match for the rest of the world into an oblivious mess so that they can control the world. And I think it's way past time to be just labeled a conspiracy theorist for saying this, because there's more and more people thinking it. And the more and more people thinking it, the more and more dangerous we are to those people who want to destroy America. And they're gonna get desperate. They're gonna get even worse. That's all I'm gonna say.
I made a note to myself over the weekend, Mike. Institutions, because I'm watching, and I want to talk about it a little bit more after this break. But the Indianapolis 500 was awesome. I hadn't watched it in years, and I mean, it was patriotism. It was all you'd want to see. But these are the kind of institutions that the left is trying to destroy. They can't build anything. They're literally incapable of building anything. They're only capable of tearing down, and that's who we're dealing with here.
We are. We're, and they're so emboldened that they can go ahead and defend violent criminals, and like you said many times before, but refuse to stand for people that truly need to be honored and respected.
Yep. Oh, yeah, well, because it was Happy Africa Day yesterday in Chicago. I mean, I'm telling you, they're sick. They're mentally ill. And let me go back to this, because our man Rick Bigelow just sent me some facts. At least 10 million Chinese were killed by the Japanese 1935 to 1945. And we're apologizing, basically, through our president for dropping a bomb that saved millions more lives. Not just Americans either, by the way. Unreal.
Bob, in 1992, I walked the streets of many cities in China, and people immediately recognized me as an American, and they waved their hand in a V and said, AVG. That's the English they knew. AVG stood for American Volunteer Group that defended China. And I guess this was off the books, right?
Yeah.
We were defending China against Japan. And this was in 92.
Yeah.
And they were still indebted that many years later in praising me for that.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff, Michael. Well, look at the people at their core are generally good in any country. And I actually believe in every country. But if their leadership is bad and enough of the sheep follow that bad leadership, you can destroy a country very quickly. You can use the power of a country for ill. It's been proven in history over and over again. Thank you, Michael. We got to take a break because we've got to do the Veterans Tribute for this hour. Let's hear from our great sponsors. We'll come back. We'll talk about our veterans and for this hour, and then more of the Bob Cordaro Show. Our veterans this hour brought to you by John Basiliga, the Basiliga family of companies, Eastern Roofing Systems, one of the largest commercial roofers in the eastern seaboard of the United States. Guess what? They can use that expertise and do your home or your small business building. Bring it right to you here in Northeast PA. Basiliga Hospitality. Well, this is a big week for them. The Queen City Tavern, Main Drag, downtown Oliphant. Grand opening Thursday night. And then Friday, Saturday, I think it's already sold out, the Stegmeyer Mansion, South Franklin Street, Wilkes-Barre. Take yourself back to another time, Newport, and enjoy the Stegmeyer Mansion, the Mary Stegmeyer Mansion. It's incredible. It is incredible. Serenity Care, 4 facilities throughout Northeast Pennsylvania, the gold standard in senior care. Whether for you or a loved one, these places all 4 have been totally rebuilt. Ready for patients, ready for people to live there. You'll be proud they're there. You'll be proud you live there. Serenity Care. And, of course, J. Bass Realty. The finest apartments anywhere. And the finest commercial Class A office space you'll find in Northeast Pennsylvania. Sterling Schumann received the Purple Heart during the Korean War. He was 93. He was from Bloomsburg, and he died March 22nd. Born in 1931 in Derringer, Pennsylvania. Graduated from high school. He joined the United States Army, serving us from 1948 to 1957. While serving the Army, he fought during the Korean War, recipient of a Purple Heart for us. Survived by 4 children, 8 grandchildren, 14 great-grandchildren. Sadly preceded in death by his wife, Gladys. She passed away in 2022, and tragically by a grandson, Bradley Schumann, and a great-granddaughter, Julia Jones. Sterling Schumann. John Betts, Navy veteran, farmer, township supervisor. He was 99. Lifetime resident of Anthony Township. Born in Jerseytown. Married the former Susie Eleanor Gordner. Together, they had celebrated 72 years of marriage before her passing in 2020. U.S. Navy veteran serving honorably during World War II. He served aboard the USS Wrangell during 3 major battles: Iwo Jima, Okinawa, and the liberation of the Philippines. Unbelievable. For his heroic service, he received 3 Bronze Stars. That means it's the real deal. He was a witness to the raising of the American flag at Iwo Jima, what those eyes saw. Remember the Turbotville VFW Post, Millville American Legion, and North Montour Sportsmen's Association? Member of the St. James Episcopal Church and Exchange. Retired from Danville State Hospital. He was the grounds manager there. He farmed in Anthony Township and also served as a township supervisor there for 18 years. A great baseball player. John Betts is survived by 2 sons, Harry and Melvin. They're no kids either. 3 daughters, 13 grandchildren, 22 great-grandchildren, 3 great-great-grandchildren, and 5 step-great-grandchildren. Tragically preceded in death by his grandson, Carl Durr, and 5 brothers. World War II veteran, John Betts. Our great veterans brought to you this hour and every hour, this day and every day, by John Basiliga and his incredible companies. Storm Tracker 16 forecast from meteorologist Joe Snedeker today. A mix of clouds and sun. Mild, the best day of the week, 73. Tonight, increasing clouds with showers likely, 53. Wednesday, clouds with on and off showers, 63. Thursday, clouds, some breaks of sun with a chance of showers, 70. And I heard Joe say the weekend's going to be lousy. We'll see. We'll see. He'll update us during the week. No use wringing your hands. Somebody says, Bob, you're absolutely right concerning institutions. Number one, they're attacking the Catholic Church. Number two, all other Christian and Jewish religions. Number three, the Boy Scouts, etc. They're trying to, number four, patriotic holidays. Number five, sports. Yeah, Second Amendment. Number six, masculinity. Yep. After it all. They're after it all. They're trying to destroy it all. They are the enemies of this country. No sugarcoating it. And they're working together with Islamists to destroy this country and this culture. Don't doubt me for a moment. That's their goal. And they think they're going to be in charge of it. It's an unholy alliance with fake holies like the Islamists. I note I didn't say Muslims. Big difference. Let's go to Joe from Route 11. Joe, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
Oh my! I got my new phone. Am I all right here with you?
Yeah, sounds perfect.
Okay. My dad. He World War II vet. He was born in 1925. He joined when he was 17. I believe 24th Infantry. He fought mainly over in Philippines, and he had three beachheads, arrowheads, which means his platoon was the first to basically engage on the.
Wow.
Yeah, he told me some stories that, like, you're talking to somebody in one of the boats that you get dropped off. I think they're U-boats, and he says, before you know it, you're running up, and here's a guy like you and I, say if we're just talking, and next thing I look over, and there's a bullet through your head, and there's your brains.
Yep.
It was so amazing what these guys went through, and I mean he ironically, the only thing he didn't want to talk about, which I found out when he was his last 5 years, he died at 92. He didn't want to talk about that he had a tryout with the Brooklyn Dodgers. He was had a great arm, and that was the main thing that he.
Why didn't he want to talk about that?
Isn't that crazy? Huh? I mean, I wish he would have pushed me.
What was his? Give us his full name, Joe. What was his full name, so we remember?
Joseph Subsack. Joe Subsack, my dad.
Subsack. Okay.
He was from Myers. He went to Myers, and ironically, I ran into a few of. I was up a mountaintop, and I had a flat tire. I went to this, and I had a flat tire because I hit a deer, and I met this guy, and he asked me my name. He goes, "Any relation to Subby?" And I says, "Yeah." That's my dad. He goes, "Boy, what a ball player." He was able to throw from one end of the football field to the other with the baseball, and he used to throw a football 70 yards, 75 yards. He was exceptional. He was ambidextrous, but he didn't want to. He was. I'm thinking, why didn't? And I was an above average athlete, and why didn't you push me for it? I'm telling you, that made me mad. It made me mad as he was. I didn't even talk about it. So,
a different breed, huh? A different breed of cat, weren't they?
And he used to get when the hand grenades. A lot of people, they're hard to throw. And everybody when they were like in close encounters, they would give him the hand grenades, and he'd be throwing them, launching them like. He just loved to throw them.
The ones that they used in World War II were very heavy. I threw one once.
Yeah,
empty of the charge.
I was in the Army. Yes, it's very awkward. You can't throw them overhand. You got to throw them at an angle.
And it's a straight. You got to keep your arms straight.
You have to throw your arms straight, and basically that's the direction where they're supposed to hit. But it's almost like golf. You got to really get into it. But what he did is he left, and he was in I believe it was MacArthur said, "I shall return." He was originally supposed to be over there, but then they taken him to go over in Germany, And when he did return they took that beachhead and it was secure, and he came and he was in that picture when I think it was MacArthur. It wasn't Patton. It was MacArthur when he says, "I shall return." Do you remember that?
When he was waiting
statement?
ashore.
Yes, he was waiting exactly with his khakis on, and he was
Which
sharp
they
as
did
hell.
2 takes of that, by the way.
Yeah, my dad was in there. My dad was
How about
within
that?
15, 20 yards, and he said you couldn't get in to shake his hand. He didn't, but they right after they pretty much taken those islands, and then he went in, and then he was in for training. They were for basically trained in warfare, for jungle warfare, but they had to go through I think 8 or 12 weeks of basically urban warfare, being house to house.
Yeah,
and they were told. He said they were told, and he was sergeant of the guard that day. And he said that prior to this, they were told, and they were briefed. I think they were going in 3 days, and they were going to be. They told that you guys, this is it. Consider a million loss is what they were saying.
Yeah, million casualties
because
on our
everybody's
side.
gonna fight you.
That was just our side. The Japanese could have been 2 million, could have been more.
Oh yeah, well right. Well, you're gonna have to learn to shoot men, children, everything. It's a different war because everybody's going to be armed. And he told me that once he also has a medal. Maybe I'll take a picture, and I'll send you.
Joe,
some of
you've got to
his medal.
send me his obituary so we could do a tribute and you could talk about him on the show. Please do that.
I will. I will do that. And the only other thing is when he
make sure you include your phone number
or
email. Okay.
Yeah, I will. I just got a new phone, and I'm not too familiar with it. And I will I'll have my wife do it, and I'll get you a picture of that. And and it was amazing how when he went over there, how he said even then when they did a surrender, that like some guy, we'd be walking down the streets, and they'd fling a cigarette out. How their people would their streets were spotless. They would run out and grab a cigarette.
Yeah.
And just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they were he said they were so like strong, independent people, but they did what they believed in. And he said it was and they were pretty much ahead in and they put them back in some of their factories. But he said they were nasty, nasty people. I mean, there's some stuff I couldn't tell you on air that he told me about. And he came down with malaria, and he was supposed to be
Joe,
on
we
guard
gotta
duty
go.
one time.
We have a hard break coming, but
I will.
make sure you send me this stuff, all right?
And thank you for letting me talk about my dad.
Oh, I love hearing it.
Okay.
Love hearing it. Thanks you.
Bob.
Great to be with you guys today. We're letting Frank finish things up here. By the way, somebody asking my email address to submit a Veterans Tribute, Robert.Cordaro, Cordaro, at Odyssey, AUDACY.com. Robert.Cordaro at Odyssey.com. Please send them. I get them regularly. I love them. We'll have to do this once in a while. Neil Husvar, North Scranton, Ronald Lewis, Whitehaven and Bear Creek, Deborah Zimmerman, Scranton, Jim Rogers, Lehman, John Betts, Anthony Township, Sterling Schumann, Bloomsburg. Our veterans brought to you by John Basiliga today. And with that, we sign off. And we gavel to a close this meeting of the Club for Common Sense. Sue Henry Show next. Rob O'Donnell Show after that. God willing, I'll be with you tomorrow morning at 9. Have a great afternoon.